Hello, everyone. Before we get into this episode, it's important for you to remember to be empathetic and understanding for every single guest that I have on this show. If you enjoy this content, please make sure to subscribe and follow because I do release weekly videos every single week. Otherwise, enjoy the show. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Deep Dives into the Minds of Esports. My name is Blake Panages, and my guest today has been a director, producer, observer, and most noticeably, one of the hottest free agents on the market related to production and directing. Please let me welcome Jason Baker, maybe better known as Alchemist.
Hello, I like that intro. You can do my business cards for me too.
Well, I mean, I am working on eventually maybe hosting and stuff like that, so I figure I need to have those good intros that don't take 2 minutes long. Get things across very quickly is fairly good, and try to make them a little bit unique for the guests that I have on the show. So
not bad.
So we're working. It's getting better. Sometimes I throw up the hard names. You have a very easy name, which is kind of beneficial for me. But like the hard names are really what kind of get me sometimes. I've had a couple German folks on the show, and their names can be kind of tricky. So I have a bunch of questions we're going to kind of ask you, go over. We're going to delve more into your personal life. We want to know who is Alchemist as the person. And I always like to start the show off fairly simple. And so one of the things I've noticed about you, kind of getting to know you better and becoming, I would say we're friends. I don't know if you would, but I would. So getting to know you better is you really like music and you like guitars. So my very first question for you, starting off very easy, is how many guitars do you own?
It is like 11 or 12. I'm going to sell a couple because I want to buy a couple other ones.
Okay. That's good.
I don't need, I need two is all I need.
Yeah.
But in fact, I have all these guitars, but I just play one all the time. So I really actually only need one, but whatever.
So have you ever played in a band? Because I actually own 4 guitars. They're nothing special. Or no, 5. I own 5 guitars. They're not all like super special or anything like that because I've never had a ton of money, but they are like my babies. And so why do you have so many guitars? Did you play in bands?
Well, I never get rid of guitars. Well, I had one stolen from me, but I have the guitar that I bought. I saved up all summer for when I was 14. So I still have that guitar. And then now my next guitar, when I was 17, I got a Gibson Les Paul, so I still have that one. And then I got a divorce, so I bought myself a guitar when I got a divorce. As hey, congratulations, you're single, you can spend money how you want. Bought myself another guitar, and then after that, it was I'm gonna go to the store to buy guitar strings. Oh, I like this guitar, I'm gonna buy this guitar too. So it kind of got a little away from me for a little bit. I had a custom guitar built. It was a Warmoth guitar, but it's still custom guitar, and that's been my main one that I play, and I just don't play anything else after that. So why I still own all these others, I don't know.
Well, I mean, if you're ever looking to get rid of some, I will make the drive down to where you live and pick some up. Not a problem. So have you played in bands before? Because I played in bands, and that was one of the most exhilarating feelings of my life. So what was the biggest crowd you got to play for?
Nothing super huge, just mostly like high school parties type stuff. So I have a twin brother, and he's a drummer. So he always wanted to play drums. I always wanted to play guitar. Both of us big Led Zeppelin fans. So we had a band in, I guess, high school-ish era through kind of like into college. But mostly we just jammed in the basement, and we had friends come over. Like we had actual bands where we wrote original songs and had people come over and record and stuff. Then we'd play parties with covers, and I think we'd have a 3 or 4 hour set, and sometimes we'd play the set over and over because that's how the party's going. So yes, I played in bands, but mostly. So this goes back into growing up. My dad had lots of friends that were in bands, and a lot of local scenes in St. Louis, and it's not so much now, but like in the early 60s, St. Louis was really big on music, and it's a really big hotspot for music. So there was lots of musicians and stuff. So his friends were musicians. So when I was a little kid, I'd go over to their house and watch them jam in the basement. And to me, that's what bands were. It wasn't going out to stadiums and clubs. It was these guys getting together and just jamming in the basement. So I did that a lot when I didn't think I went to my first concert until I was like 13 or 14, and I was already playing before then. So It just was not what my mindset was like to be on stage. It was just to connect with, 3 or 4 other people and just make music.
So that brings up some kind of like interesting questions about growing up. So first of all, let's get into that. Like you're growing up a little bit. So to put it in perspective, you were born a little bit after the Vietnam War, right around the time the Vietnam War was ending, according to my math. 76.
74. I did not serve in the war.
Yeah. So
not that old.
You were born, right? It ended 70. That's so right around the time. So that you grew up in a very interesting musical era because you were hitting like probably not so much the 70s because of just your age, but like the 80s definitely had some interesting music that came out.
I hated the 80s.
Did you really?
80s. It's just the worst music. So I grew up I didn't grow up on nursery rhymes or things like that. I grew up with all my dad's records. So Beatles and Led Zeppelin and The Who, Pink Floyd. Like I remember The Wall coming out brand new, like in 79, and my dad bringing that album home and just listening to the album, sitting my head next to his giant speakers and just flipping through the artwork and just being kind of just thrown into this world of Pink Floyd. Like, wow, this is great. So that's what I grew up with. And then the music that was popular, I didn't like, Motley Crue and like all those glam bands and Kiss. I couldn't stand any of that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and it's fine that you like it, but it wasn't for me. There's this grittiness to music that I like, and it's that danger of at any moment it could fall apart, and not that it's perfectly processed and perfect in a line. And it really, in the 80s, I got into rap music because we had some good rap music stations. And so I was like, well, this is boring, but this is kind of dangerous. Because if I had heard punk rock music in the early 80s, I would have gone to punk rock music, but I hadn't heard it. It just wasn't, I wasn't around people. So now you just think of, music's easy to get to. It was very hard, unless it was on a local radio station, or you knew somebody in college, or you knew somebody that worked at a record store. You were not exposed to lots and lots of music. So I listened to my dad's albums, and I went out and listened to whatever was on the radio. It was like, probably about 87 or so, then I really started branching out and started looking for other stuff. And I started getting into I started meeting guys that were skaters. So I'd get to the skater music and the punk rock music, and then get into Suicidal Tendencies and Dead Kennedys and stuff that were a little older, but I was like starting to get exposed to some of that stuff. And that just kind of just ramped us right into the 90s, which was just a wonderful spot to be in music, because none of the radio stations knew what to do. And they were just like, this sounds different, let's play this. This sounds different, let's play that. And it was, you had radio stations competing, trying to show who has the best stuff. There were all these great local bands that were playing. So it was just a great and fun time.
Yeah. When you mentioned Pink Floyd, actually, Wish You Were Here was the first song that I learned how to play on guitar and sing at the same time. So it's like one of the songs that is like really kind of big for me growing up. Because my dad, he was born in 71. And so a lot of the music that I grew up on was the same stuff that he listened to, because he did not branch out into anything. So like when you mentioned like The Who or Led Zeppelin, I was definitely listening to a lot of that music growing up, even though I was born in 92. So it's kind of hilarious that there's some overlap there. In the 90s, I will say the 90s were a great set of music. You had like Stone Temple Pilots and Radiohead and a bunch of other stuff. I mean,
not so much Radiohead, but no. So like, I mean, like when, but it had Soundgarden, which Soundgarden, and so like the way to me when I think of the music, it's like Jane's Addiction came out, and Jane's Addiction and Suicidal Tendencies like really bridged the gap between kind of metal and alternative music and punk rock, and just kind of infused it. And then you had on mainstream, you had Nirvana come out. Well, Soundgarden first, and then Nirvana and Alice in Chains and Pearl Jam. Those just really blew up, and then you started getting all the side ones. Then you started also then finding their influences, like, here's the Melvins, or here's Caius. Like when Tool came out, it was just like, oh my gosh, I haven't heard a drummer sound like this, and the way a singer sound. Like I've seen Tool like 12 times in concert.
I would like to see Tool.
Yeah.
Though
So
their videos are always so creepy. Like
yeah,
all of their,
wonderful.
they are wonderful, but they are still creepy.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you have a brother. What's the age difference between you and your brother? Or are you twins, like
5
identical?
minutes. 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So 5 minutes. I wasn't sure how close
Yeah.
the twins were.
He's older by 5 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So he rubs that in because that's what older brothers do, doesn't he?
I'm gonna be in. I can't say. I'm going to be in Europe and on my birthday, so I'm gonna actually be older than him on my birthday. So I can't wait.
Oh, you're gonna finally get that payback, and so
Yeah.
so you grew up in the St. Louis area, and you've never really left the St. Louis area, like kind of.
Really, I mean, like I lived in Phoenix.
You always
for a
come
few
back.
years.
You always come back.
I mean, it's where my family is, so it's easy to come back to where your family is. And
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, what was it like growing up in St. Louis at that time then? Because you grew up through the '80s into the '90s.
There's actually a documentary on Netflix called Spanish Lake. Well, I don't know if it's still on there, but it's called Spanish Lake. And it's mostly from the point of view of the generation a little bit older than me.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of have a different way of looking at things than I did. But where I grew up, it was in an unincorporated area of St. Louis. And when they closed down the projects in the city of St. Louis, all the people that were living in the projects, they moved into apartment complexes into my neighborhood. So my neighborhood was like just kind of a lower middle class neighborhood, and it ended up becoming a lower middle class neighborhood that was half Section 8. So, you had people from southern Missouri in with their, trailer park mentality, and then you had people from the city in. And so it was a big clash of people. And that's the polite way to say lots of white people and black people sometimes getting along and sometimes not getting along. Just became high crime. I was okay overall with it, but the amount of I've seen more guns than you would expect somebody by the time of 16, 17 at parties and places. So, yeah.
Okay, so
I don't know if that's a good answer, but that's
kind of what I'm looking at. Is like what was because like I've always believed that the person that we are now is accumulation of all the things that have kind of happened to us in our past, and like what kind of things that make up us, and how we tend to want to move that forward into the future. And so, in order to kind of really understand the person as a whole, you really need to understand kind of like what types of things did they go through. And I think that is like the best way to kind of like look at it. And so like when I ask some of these things, I'm like, okay, well, what helped shape Alchemist as he is today? Could this be something here?
Yeah, maybe. So being a twin, I'm not walking around looking for approval. I'm not looking for, I have a friend. So that part's covered. So I don't need your approval. I don't need you to like me. So I would go to lunch, and one day I'm hanging out with the Burnouts, and we're talking about Led Zeppelin, and we're talking about, oh, hey, check out this band called Metallica. So I'm checking out all that stuff. And then the next day, I'm sitting with all black kids, and we're talking about Eric B. and Rakim, and hey, check out this new band called Public Enemy. And to me, that was just normal. Was like I would just go around different groups, and I was friends with multiple groups, and I would say I was popular, but not in the everyone follow me popular. Yeah. Like in high school, I hung out with people that played hockey and football, and I would those are the parties that I would go to. When my band started playing, those were the parties we were playing at, but I wasn't a jock. So,
So when you're looking at like the school, did you ever get into sports or anything like that? I know music was something that was fairly popular. Did you ever do anything else growing up in school that like sports or?
Not in school, but we did did soccer and did baseball. Mm-hmm. Baseball is where I learned I needed glasses.
Did you get smacked in the face?
In the hand a few times, and stuff like that. Just like I couldn't see, but I didn't know I couldn't see. I was just like, they were like, "Oh, keep your eye on the ball." It's like, where is it? So I we would play football and stuff after school, and but financially we weren't well off, so it's not like we could do hockey, which was the only sport I actually kind of liked. I hated baseball, hated soccer. So
Hockey
I
is pretty
played a little bit.
expensive.
Yeah, hockey's stupid expensive, and so it's stuff that I like. Like I'd go to the games and watch my friends play and stuff, but uh, I'm 5'5". I'm a short guy, and I think high school. I don't think I weighed over 110 pounds. Uh, I wasn't gonna. I'm not a sports guy. Like I just once I can't put my shoulder into somebody and move them, then it's kind of pointless. So.
That makes sense. So kind of looking at another aspect of kind of like growing up in school, were you a good student? Were you not good student? Because you seem really intelligent now. Were you always like that growing up?
So I started off, no, not a good student. Not like I hated school. I still think I hate rules. I hate, routine, but I like it in my personal life. I just don't like other people imposing it on me. So I think in junior high one year, I had my grade point average was 0.833. And because all I did was write notes, because we didn't have email. All I did was write notes and talk to women. Or girls at that time, because I was a kid. But that's all I did, and I just chased women, and eventually I got put into a private school for my church. So my mom got my church to put me into a private school, me and my brother, and that was like we would go from a school that was 300 kids to like 30 in a class. That was it. Like all the 8th grade class was 30 kids. So that was like a culture shock, and that was weird. And so there was nothing else to do but study. And so it's not that I wasn't smart. I guess I kind of started applying myself then.
Okay, that makes sense. So what did your parents do growing up? Because you mentioned you lived in a poorer section of St. Louis.
My dad was a carpenter. My dad's still a carpenter, and we'd go to work with him on weekends or every summer. Probably from the time I was 11 on, we'd just go to work with my dad. My mom, she had a couple different jobs, but worked a lot in the hospital system as like a clerk or secretary or office manager, stuff like that. Growing up, and they had divorced by the time I was like in 5th or 6th grade or something like that. So. And I saw my dad, like I'm not like a scarred kid where I didn't, my parents didn't love me. No, I mean, they were fine. I'd stay all week with my mom. I'd spend a lot of weekends with my dad. In the summer, I would work with him, and we'd go camping, go fishing, all that stuff. So I guess about as normal of a childhood as you could have. It's just we didn't have lots of things, which, I mean, I think we got air conditioning when I was 12 years old. So. It's just, yeah. So, and I paid for me and my brother bought our first car and our second car and third car. Like, it's not like we had a safety net of, our parents could take care of this. It just didn't happen.
So, and my stepdad actually did construction, so I would help him do construction. I think that actually working early on in my life is probably why I feel like I have such a good work ethic, to be honest, is like, you just learn that this is the way that life is. You need to work, and you should work hard, because it's better to work hard than to try to slack off. Do you think that helps shape kind of the work ethic that you have nowadays, is like very early on learning that this is something you have to do?
Yeah, and it's not even just the work ethic. To me, it's work relationships. So, say I'm working on somebody's house and I kick over a bucket of paint, and I do it in somebody's living room. So now I've just fucked up. I've absolutely fucked up. But 2 things have to happen. I have to tell my dad, so I have to take responsibility for the thing I just fucked up, and we have to solve this problem quickly and quietly. And my dad, and I know what's going to happen. My dad's going to be pissed, because my dad's thinking, I might have to replace this person's floor, or I might have to do like what all that. My dad's going to be pissed, but I have to face that immediately. But on the ride home, I'm going to have dinner with my dad, and then maybe we're going to watch the hockey game, or we're going to do something else. I have to let go that moment of my dad being mad at me to now be father and son and not work. And so to me, I can separate I can yell at somebody and then want to hang out with them, or they can get mad at me and I still want to hang out with them afterwards. Because to me, it's separate. Work it's all business.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like, especially in esports, that is something that is, in my opinion, I think lacking a lot of times. That like the separation sometimes of work and like business and stuff like that. I feel like sometimes that is a little bit lacking. I also think that in some cases there needs to be much stronger professional boundaries in place, at least from a team side, in my opinion. So
possible. I mean, I think of like, this is the old crabby me going, oh, young kids today, but like a lot of younger people seem to get their emotions and their feelings hurt way more in the context of production. And I'm just not used to that. I'm just absolutely not used to that. When I was at E-League, me and the director for that show would fight constantly. And one of the younger people on the crew actually reported us to HR because of us fighting with each other. And it's just like the stuff that Steve was like a big, like an ex-football player looking guy, and here's me, this short little guy, and he would say stuff to me and I would just laugh. Like sometimes we would really fight, and then sometimes he would just say stuff that would just get me laughing. It's just ridiculous, and it doesn't bother me. Like it can make a work day hard, and it can make some of the other, but it just doesn't bother me. Like, I guess some of the younger people, and even when I was doing that one league on the West Coast, some of the younger guys, just absolute.
Is it like Voldemort, the show that shall not be named? Is
No, I was just kidding. I don't want to call out anybody, so I'm not gonna say it.
Oh,
so it's not so much it's not that. I just don't want to call out a person. So
okay, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, they're not here to stick up for themselves, so I understand that. I imagined you would say that to their face, though. No problem.
Oh yeah, I guarantee I have. There's not one single thing that I've said on the internet that I haven't already said more and worse in private. And there's lots of things I don't say. I just don't bother saying online because I've already told. It's like, oh, why don't you tell this organization to do this? Well, I already have. I've already told them to do this. And I've told them in private, and I've given them screenshots and video examples of why what they're doing is wrong. They're just not listening. And I'm done with it. It's like moving on.
So that actually, jumping ahead a little bit here, just to kind of look at that dynamic in itself, why is it that it seems that people are so resistant to taking like pointers or advice to things to kind of improve? Because I've noticed that in a couple things. You mentioned it in production. Mental health is another one that I've seen it happen with, and it's starting to get better very, very slowly, but it is something that it seems that people are very hesitant to ever try to make changes. And I assume it's because they're scared to make changes, because humans don't like to change. But
there's multiple facets to that. From some standpoints, when you have somebody in the audience or, Reddit or something like that and says, oh, well, why don't you do this? And most of the times it's like, well, we have already considered that, but we can't because of this cost, this thing. So there's a little bit of how you handle that from the public. It should be, yeah, that's a good idea. We'll look into that. That's pretty much all you can say. Even if you know like it's stupid or there's no absolutely way that you can do it for financial reasons. So to me, when there's advice that comes in from people that aren't qualified to give some of the, or they don't have enough information to give advice, that kind of bothers me a little bit. But from a viewer standpoint, anything a viewer's throwing at you, you kind of have to pay attention to because they're watching it. They don't give a shit that that there's no budget for this extra bit of content. All they know is they're stuck watching this for 3 minutes and they're bored.
Yeah.
So that standpoint, from like during a live show, you should never question your director and you should never question your producer. It's okay to suggest things. It's okay to agree with them and then say, this may be a bad idea. But to me, that's not the time for discussion or things like that. After a show, anything's open, and you just have to take it. Sometimes it's I think people kind of build, especially online, and I think with communities and such, you kind of build this wall around yourself, and you have to kind of hold yourself up a little bit against like the onslaught, and you're so used to people, like you're playing just Counter-Strike and somebody's calling you a shit turd or something, and then you're cussing them out back, but you're holding up this kind of wall. So when somebody comes and gives you real advice, like letting your wall down to take that in, it actually hurts. Like it's growth hurts, and when you're trying to improve yourself, I think it hurts. Now, there's just been lots of shows that I've worked on that I've worked with better people that. I mean, first of all, if you're working with anybody, try to work with all way smarter people than yourself, because then you learn everything. But then you go home and you're like, oh my God, that person's so smart. That person picked up all these little details that I never saw. So you start, to me, it hurts, and it's like, but it's a kick to the ego. But you let that stuff go, and you start learning. I think I grew leaps and bounds going to TBS and working with a TV crew, because I'm in the small group of people that invented esports broadcasting.
Yeah.
So myself, like DJ Wheat and Sir Scoots, and there's like this small community of, you could probably name 15, 20 people that helped start esports broadcasting. When you go and work on a sports show, this guy that's teaching you has 50 years of experience, and he learned from the guy who had 30 years of experience, and he learned from the guy who invented it. There's this deep knowledge of all production that's going on that you're like, oh shit, I didn't know any of that. So it's humbling, and it hurts sometimes going home, realizing how much you don't know. But that's how you learn, is saying, oh, I don't know a damn thing. And, every day get better.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Like, well, besides like the get better thing, you should use it to improve and get better. I 100% agree. So, very interesting though is that like entertainment is something that's been with you, obviously in the music sense. How did the idea of getting into production ever cross? Was that like way later? Because I know you went to college briefly for electronics, I believe.
Yeah, I went to school for electronics. I worked on giant copier machines. Like bigger than car copier machines. So I was still always a big gamer. I think I got my first PC when I was like 22, 23. I built it myself and started doing LAN parties and playing Half-Life Deathmatch, and we played Quake, and Unreal Tournament was our big ones. And then Counter-Strike came out, and I just really fell in love with Counter-Strike. So I had met some local guys named Mark and John, and Mike. Mark, John, and Mike. And they were like, hey, we're going to this event in Dallas called the CPL. Do you want to go? And I'm like, actually, I got to burn vacation time. Sure, I'll go. And they just needed somebody to help pay for a hotel room. It's not like we were friends.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the hell? So we went out there, and they had a video camera, and they started filming a little bit. And I fell in love with the competition and the level of competition that was going on in that event. And I really wanted to play at a higher level. So I really started working on gathering more people to start playing. And they kind of started, Mark and John especially, started wanting to film it. And then Mike wanted to actually run the tournament. And really within a couple of years, I was competing in CPLs and helping film CPLs, and Mike was actually running the tournament at the CPLs. So it's kind of funny of like us four on that trip just kind of end up doing all this stuff at the events. I wanted to like we would talk about it. Like we talked about it the whole trip after that first event. And that was 2001. Was like, man, other people need to see this. Other people need to see this electricity in the room. And like when you go and see stadium full of people now and they all jump up because somebody clutches a 3-verse-1, that's what I mean. I wanted other people to feel what I felt then. So in 2002, when they went in there, or Mark and John went in and started filming, I was playing, and we of course got knocked out of the tournament the first round because, it was like the top 15 teams in the world, and then team 128. We weren't that low, but we were a lower team. So we'd get knocked out, and then Mark and John, like right after, comes to me, hey, we agreed to make a video every day of this 5-day event or 4-day event, and we're on the first day and we're out of ideas. And I was like, oh, I got plenty of ideas. Let's go film this guy. Let's go interview some people and figure out who they like. Oh, let's go, hey, this team's playing. Let's go film this team. Because they didn't even know the teams. They were kind of casual fans. And I was like, oh, no, this is Zex. Let's go get Zex. And let's talk these guys into doing an interview. And so I just started, I don't know, my brain just didn't shut off. I just started wanting to do all these things with the video, and then I'd stand behind them, no, cut that out, and do that, because it's the old process of filming to tape and then transferring it. Like, it would take us 16 to 19 hours a day just to make a couple videos.
Yeah. So before that, had you had any experience doing any video editing, or was that like video work at all, or any sort of? You mentioned that you did some recording, like music recording, before that, but had you done any other sort of type of media work up to that point?
No, we couldn't afford things like that. So I'd never, I think maybe had like a cousin that had a video camera one time, but no, I'd never messed with anything like that.
Okay. So you start doing it. At what point does it become something that you say, okay, I am tired of working on printers and I want to do this for the rest of my life?
I mean, that was like that day in 2001,
okay.
But it wasn't until, so MLG bought a site that I was working on. I was doing writing and I was doing daily content called Got Frag.
Yeah.
And they bought that, and they provided a salary so I could quit my job. And I was actually working for a startup for a little bit, but that's a whole nother story. I don't want to even get into. I was just going to
get into that.
No, it's not even worth it. It's for another time maybe. But so I worked for a startup for about a year. And I knew this buyout for Got Frag was coming. So to me, it was a stopgap of like, hey, if this startup takes off, then maybe I can make some money out of it. I cared for what they were doing, but yeah, let's move on. So, but it was really about trying to do live broadcasts, because that's what myself and Sir Scoots were really working for. We knew how to do it. We knew how to broadcast the game. We just kind of knew all the tricks around, the game. Like if I was a coder, I would have been able to figure out some of the tricks that they figured out later, but I wasn't a coder. So it was all kind of analog switches, and that's it. I guess that was like 2000. I kind of like fading off into memory land here. So I think it was like 2000, late 2005. 2006 is about the time that I started doing Got Frag full time and making content, and we did Counter-Strike and Fear Combat and World of Warcraft and maybe some Call of Duty and a couple other things like that.
But you knew after the first day that if I can ever make this a job, I would just do this for the rest of my life.
Yeah, and I didn't think that would ever happen.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like, yeah, I mean, who would think?
The internet isn't like flying the way it is nowadays. So even like back in 2001, like there was internet, but I think I still had dial-up in 2001. So
yeah, I mean, our videos were like 640 by 480, and
I went back and watched some of them.
4 or 5 minutes long.
Those are like 2014 or 2013. You have a YouTube channel. If anyone wants to see Jason, very, very young looking, without a beard, you just go back to some of his old videos, because they are great.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not a time that I was on camera that I wanted to be on camera. Anytime I'm on camera, it's because somebody else like was stuck in a meeting or didn't make it, and I was like, fine, I'll do it. So
Yeah, it was
I
it was
don't know
very
if I have
interesting.
no beard though.
You I'm almost positive you do, because I think the one where you rickrolled the two people who were on set.
Oh, that's possible. That was 2000. That was probably 2007, 2008.
Yeah. So, and that was, I was like, this doesn't even look. I've had Sir Scoots on the show too, and like
Yeah.
both of you turn around, and I'm like, I don't recognize either one of these people, and I've seen both of them, so I thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah, which is like when I think of Sir Scoots, that's who I see in my brain. I don't see, extra gray Scoots. I see that Scoots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of go into your college. What made you decide to go into electronics and go into college? Because I mean, obviously, you didn't end up finishing. You mentioned you were like one credit short of finishing, or one class short of finishing, on a different interview that I had watched a while ago. But like, what made you decide I want to go into electronics for school?
Um, Originally, I had kind of the hope of building guitar amps, and I was kind of like, oh, and I've always liked to figure out how things worked, and so I went to tech school during high school. So I was in tech school half the day, and then regular high school the rest, and I just took electronics. And I was like, well, now time to just go get a degree in it because it wasn't any different. It
Mhm.
really, what I learned in high school was pretty much the same stuff that I was learning in college. So it was really easy. But I was working a full time job while I was going to college. I
Yeah.
was working on the copier machines, um, which is part of the reasons why I didn't finish. It was just like I was tired, and it was like I had like 3 credits, but the way it lined up is they were all like my student advisor screwed me, and I had these 3 classes that it would take me a year to finish school because they each had to be done one after the other. And I was just, I'm done. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. I was working 50 hours a week. I was making good money. And it was, it was like kind of like at that .com boom. So there was,
Mhm.
nobody cared if you had a college degree or not. So I just didn't do it. I didn't finish.
Feels bad for today, right? Like screw us kids who have.
You kids got lied to. You
Yeah,
guys
we
have
got
absolutely got
dude.
lied to.
My student loans are just like screwing me over. It's terrible. Oh,
Yeah,
so
that's a whole subject.
yeah, it is. So looking at kind of that, you mentioned that you were actually married, and this is actually something that I never knew about you. Is that why you stayed in St. Louis? Did you ever try to go anywhere else? When did you get married?
Um, I got married when I was, I guess, about 21. Me and my girlfriend moved in together when I was probably 19 or 20. It was actually pretty close out of high school.
Mhm.
She actually paid for a lot of my college.
Wow.
Yeah, so I had a sugar mama. Uh, but and then we bought a house, and I think I got a divorce when I was about 25. I think I
Mhm.
bought a house when I was like 23, 24, which is something when you don't have tons of college loans, you can get a loan for a house because this was the pre-housing boom. That's what they were screwing us over on that first. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, I did that. Um, it's kind of like I never wanted to be married, and I had a really good friend of mine pass away when I was 21, and that's kind of like did my decision of like, oh, life's short, let's just get married, and I was a fucking idiot, and I shouldn't have done it. So
Mhm.
nobody should get married until they're at least in their full time job for a couple of years and past 25 because you just change so much.
Yeah.
We both just changed a lot. I started getting into computers and video games and such, and she was right. I'm wasting my time.
That little throwback to her if she's watching, like I see you there, sir.
She still talks to my sister. I'm sure she hears where I'm going and what I'm doing, and I honestly don't care. Like,
Okay.
we got a divorce. Besides her calling the wrong number about once every few years, I don't talk to her. We don't. That's fine.
Okay.
So
Okay. So you mentioned that a friend passed away when you were 21. What happened with that?
no, I don't want to talk about that.
Okay.
No, I don't want
Okay.
to talk about that.
That's fine. So kind of looking more onto your life and getting in here, you're working at this printing shop, and you start taking jobs doing places, and you eventually decide that you're gonna move to Arizona for a few years. Was that something that was scary to do, because you obviously had to leave your job too?
Well, I mean, so I would work all day on my copier job, and I'd go home in the evening, and I was either an anti-cheat admin for a league, or I did a radio show, or we did videos. Like I spent all my free time doing esports if I wasn't at work. So the fact that I get to turn it to work all esports was exciting to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked Arizona. I hate cold weather. I complain. Like, there's probably 50% of my tweets is complaining about being cold. I hate it. Cannot stand it. So, I had visited Scoots a couple times in Arizona, and we convinced MLG to let us build a studio out there. So I was excited to go out there. The hardest thing is not hanging out with my brother all the time when I do move out of state and stuff. But other than that, I'm so busy I don't even notice like time pass. It's like, oh, it's another year. So
your brother was doing work with you guys, especially like the first time that you went down to Dallas. You mentioned that he was helping out with that. Did he ever decide to get into esports?
More of a casual. He just never, like, he's married, and I don't think he ever wanted to put that much time into it. He's an artist as well, and he likes to put a lot of time into painting and drawing. And so, like, in 2006, he was I directed all the game stuff and produced the show, and then he did a lot of the other camera stuff, and we kind of alternated directing scenes and directing moments in the show. Because he thinks about Counter-Strike like I think about Counter-Strike, of what's important and what's the big moment. And, we didn't have to talk about, oh, it's a 3v1 situation, go on the one. We just knew that that's the rule to do. Or, this guy picked up this AWP last round, let's follow this AWP into the next round and see what happens. Like, those little storylines of moments in a match, we just kind of agreed on immediately. So that was different. So that was good. I think he only got to work two, like I got Fraggin event, and then that CPL event's really the only ones he worked with me. And then like he helped with some of our after movies and stuff. Like, hey, I watched this match. Here was a good moment. You guys could use this, that type of stuff.
Okay. So all by yourself in this esports endeavor, except for your friends, obviously. You get a chance to go full-time into esports. What made you decide that, hey, I don't want to get rid of my house and I still want this to always be my home base? Because it's never that you really, like, even if you leave a long period of time, you always seem to come back to obviously your hometown, and you I believe you said that you had a house
yes.
there. So you're never planning on leaving, because you're never like, okay, we're moving to LA and I'm selling my house and I'm going to get...
Well, yes and no. So when I went to Phoenix, my brother and I bought this house together.
Okay.
So when I moved to Phoenix, him and his girlfriend, his future wife, were living here. So when I came back from Phoenix, I just it was the three of us. And then after a while, I had a girlfriend that was we were kind of looking to move in together. And I was like, hey, John, do you want to buy your own house, or do you want me to buy my own house? He ended up buying his own, and I kept this one. And then me and my girlfriend broke up 6 months later. That's a whole other story. But so then my house would sit empty for, like, I'd go to Atlanta for 6 months. My house would just sit empty, and it's just falling apart. And I'd come home and I'd work on it for a little bit, and then I'd go someplace else. I was in the process of filling out the final papers to put it on the market on October 5th last year, which was the day that they decided that I was not going to be working with Blizzard anymore. So
that was very close.
That was very close. And honestly, if I had put my house on the market, I would have just either just moved to Arizona or I would have stayed in. Like the main reason I left LA is my lease was up in my apartment, and if we wanted to extend the lease one more month, it would cost me $3,000. And it was actually cheaper for me to ship all my stuff back to St. Louis and just live here than it would be to stay.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, screw it, I'm just going to go back to St. Louis. I'll go to St. Louis for a couple months, and then I'll go someplace else. And I've been working remote or traveling to all my shows, so it doesn't matter where I live.
Yeah.
So to put it in perspective, my half of the rent in LA was like $1,600 a month, which, East and West Coast people they're like, yeah, that sounds about right. My house payment's $800 a month for a 2-story house. I have a garage and a backyard and a front yard. The cost, yeah, and it's like the cost is just so much cheaper that it's easy to stay here. And I really do want to sell my house because I can't take care of a house. I'm gone too much. Like this month alone, I'm not home, but like 4 or 5 days at a time, and then I'm constantly going someplace for trips. So I want to get out of here. I want to sell the house, and I'll miss being able to play guitar as loud as I want. But oh well.
Yeah, we in the Midwest are blessed with land that is, and like cheap land, I will say. Like living in Michigan, when I moved to LA for a year, it was my first experience living in a big city in my life, and it was like, wow, this is kind of terrifying. But also, it's like everything is so expensive. Like it is insane how expensive it is out there comparative to like Michigan or Illinois, and
yeah. Yeah, in 2008, so they closed down our Phoenix branch, MLG did, and they offered Sir Scoots and myself a chance to go to New York full time. Mm-hmm. And I hate New York. It's too busy. It's too crowded. I can't stand being around that many people. And so, like, it's okay in short bursts, but I can't live there. I can't... Mm-hmm. They didn't offer me a raise. It was like, hey, for the same amount of money you're living, come on out here, and then you're going to have to share an apartment or something, or commute an hour every day. And
yeah,
I don't want to live like that. I hate commuting. I'd rather pay a little bit more money not to commute, but I don't want to spend half my paycheck on an apartment. That sucks.
Yeah.
So.
Makes sense. So speaking of like commuting and traveling, is that something that you struggle with? Because you're traveling all the time now. You're functionally, like, you obviously never really work. You're either working from home or you're flying out to all these different places. You've done a lot with the Blast Pro series so far with Sao Paulo and Miami now. And I imagine you have other stuff in the future that you can't talk about. But you're going to be like traveling all over. Does the travel ever like really wear on you? Because I know other people I've talked to have mentioned it. Like when I had Anders on the show, he said that it's actually kind of really hard. But he also has a family. That is one of the reasons why he struggles with it. So.
Everyone struggles with it, and if you talk to any, so sorry, it just made me think of something else. No, so I'll make this other statement, then I'll answer your question because I'll forget my earlier stuff. When people watch an event from the comfort of their home, and they've sitting there and they're eating their chicken tenders and they're drinking whatever drink they want to drink and they've relaxed and they're hanging out. And yeah, they might be watching the entire 8-hour show and they're like, oh, that caster didn't notice that this person died by a flashbang hitting them and killing them. Why didn't they notice that? And there's going to be a Reddit thread and there'll be Twitter. And it's like, well, last week this guy was on the other side of the world and he traveled for 18 hours to get here. And with lack of sleep, and now they sat through 4 hours of meetings and rehearsals and practice that's mind-numbingly dull for them. For the talent, that shit's boring as hell. And then they have to perform. So guess what? They didn't see that one fucking flashbang. Who gives a shit? The comfort of working at home or working a studio job versus traveling in all the time is just, there's a lot more stress, there's a lot more pressure, especially on the production side because nothing ever works. And you're working around people who may not know much about what you guys are doing on a production side. So then you're over communicating every single thing that you're doing. So that's tough. So to answer your original question, I hate traveling. I fucking hate it. I'm so tired of it. I like if somebody made teleporters, that would be fine. I don't mind the stress of the actual show. I don't mind the stress of the setup and dealing with that. It's not great. It's not as great as working like at E-League or even Overwatch League, where you worked in the same studio every single day and you did some quick tests, everything works, boom, now you're making a show. Where you spend so much of your energy and time just getting the show to work on a traveling show. You're like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell the talent that we can do this extra bit. Or somebody will come up to you, like Moses was like, hey, I got this great idea to do this thing. And you're like, that's wonderful. I have zero time to even implement. Mm-hmm. Because we can't even see the graphics engine. Like none of this stuff just works. I mean, it takes lots and lots of effort from lots of people to get these shows running. So I hate traveling. I hate airports. I hate being told to stand in line. I hate being told when I have to sit down. Shit drives me batty. I don't like it. So if somebody said, hey, Jason, one of the things is I've been offered 4 studio or kind of like permanent gigs this year. And right now I just got out of a bad relationship. I want to date around mode. So I'm dating around. So I'm not committing to anything. But I like a studio show. I like not so much the routine, but I like the not going to an airport and then sitting in a plane for 16 hours and yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I don't blame you. I don't particularly like airplanes either, and the long traveling that I did. You do mention some stuff that I do want to kind of pick your brain on related to Overwatch League, though, because you mentioned traveling shows and like the difficulties with it. And because Overwatch is looking to do geolocation, I imagine they are doing some sort of traveling show. That is like in my head what I imagine that they're doing. I don't know if they're planning just staying at LA and doing it. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you've asked a question, so I guess I should shut up.
No, go ahead. What were you going to say?
As of the time that I left there, they still had no fucking clue what they were going to do. So that's all I know.
Okay.
That's as much as I know. Maybe they figured it out by now. Or maybe they're
that is not what I've heard. I've heard that they still don't know what they're doing. So, but we'll see. But I was going to ask you, how much harder is it to do a traveling show? Because you obviously don't have the same studio, but now are you working with the same people when you travel to a different show? Like, let's use the fact that they're going to Dallas now, right? Let's say you were doing the show. Would you have to hire all new people for the Dallas? Would they do like contractors for there?
So most likely they're going to use the same people that they use for BlizzCon or the New York show, NEP or somebody like that, just a vendor that has some trucks. So from an observer standpoint, they'll probably use this guy named Lance. He's done multiple shows. He knows what everybody needs. That's easy. But the problem is you're going to have less inputs. So you might have a different type of switcher you have to use. You might have a different comm system that doesn't work right until the last minute or might not even work right at all the entire show. You're going to have, we did the event in New York, we did the grand finals, I couldn't even read my screens. In a game like Overwatch, being able to see the name of players so you can call out things correctly is very important. But it's just, oh yeah, well they didn't have the good enough multi-viewers in the truck. So your equipment's never going to be as good on a traveling show versus a studio show. And you're going to spend 2 to 3 days just doing rehearsal or just doing tech stuff. And what happens is you show up to, and this is on any side, from the observer side or the production side, you show up and it's like, I need to test these 4 things before we can get on air. Forget all my other duties that I need to do. These 4 things have to be working. and the very first thing that you need to test isn't ready. And you can't do anything else until you test your first bit. Maybe it's your comms or your switcher. And now you sit and wait. And you're sitting and waiting for 4 hours because they're going to get to you. So you kind of almost, you lose energy, and you have to entertain yourself, and you have to kind of prep the best you can. But you just sit around and do nothing. And it's boring. And you're just used to it. I mean, thank God we have cell phones now. So you just sit there on your cell phone. And then you'll have to rush and get something done. I mean, we had guys folding tickets for New York because there was nothing else to do and they needed some help. Well, yeah, we'll send some guys over to fold tickets. And then it's like, oh, now they've got this up and running. Let's go test it. Oh, it doesn't work. Now we got to wait another hour for the engineer to come back through. Or, oh, it's a union shop, so now they got to run a wire between one truck and the next, and it's going to take them 4 hours because it's a union shop.
So you do lose production value. Like there's almost no way around to not have the same production value as like a studio. Your studio production value should almost always be higher, shouldn't it?
It should always be higher. Even like at E-League, we did 4 days when we did the major. We did 4 days at our studio, and then 3 days at the Fox Theater right down the street.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have as many replay machines. We didn't have as much storage space, so we weren't able to bring all the video that we had. Like we had video for the entire week, and we had video of B-roll of all the teams. Then we couldn't bring all that stuff. So like, oh, we got a delay. Well, hey, run me that Astralis package. Yeah, we don't have that. So it's always tough. Every road show there's not a, wow, that was perfect. Everyone is a struggle. I did a show where we lost comms to talent, and I couldn't talk to talent for an hour.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just like, luckily I had really good talent who could realize that they couldn't hear each other, so they couldn't hear me, and so they just made up things to do, and I couldn't do anything. Like they were too far away. Mm-hmm. And maybe it wasn't an hour. Maybe it felt like an hour, and maybe it was 15 minutes. So
that's still impressive, though. Like the ability to like just you have to make stuff up, and you have to take what's given to you. And that makes a lot of sense. So, like, kind of looking at the production things, you mentioned in a previous interview that you went to Blizzard specifically to build something, and that was really the carrot that kind of lured you into Blizzard. Do you feel like you had the resources or time, or did you actually accomplish that goal of building something, or do you feel that it didn't occur?
That's a big question. I mean, it wasn't even just build something with Overwatch League. It was build something with Overwatch League, and then it was to build something with some of their PvE events, and then build something with their World of Warcraft stuff. And it was my job pitch was not come work Overwatch League. It was work Overwatch League and then work on StarCraft and then it was like try to take over all their production stuff. But first, help us with Overwatch League. Get this up and going. I think I did a basic job of what I needed to do. I mean, I even got some of their resources to do some focus testing on how some of the observing stuff was going. I really hate that first season or that first stage that we did. I was not happy with it, but a lot of it was, when you're on air 4 days a week and then you got to do reports and testing and stuff for patches, you just didn't have time to innovate and get better. And we had some time off to actually innovate and get better for the next stage. And the meta changed. And the crew that I was working with started really understanding. Well, I kind of understanding where I was going. I would say half of them understood it, and the other were kind of just blindly doing what they thought was right. Because I see stuff now that it's like, no, you obviously don't understand what we were trying to do. There was this season would have looked completely different than last season. The way there were some limitations that the client that we had for OWL that the live client didn't have with some of the stuff that we could do with transitions and stuff. Yeah, like so, like you know, you just think of like you're in first person and you could pop out from free cam and then go over to the next person. You couldn't do that cleanly on the OWL build, and we used to do that a lot when we did the World Cup. We would pop out and go to the next person and keep people in the moment and keep people in that area. We had one little workaround that took two people to actually operate to do what one person used to be able to do. And they weren't going to fix the problem that we had. So going into this year, I was working on a way to build the whole broadcast around multiple people working one PC to build a more seamless, instead of cuts, more of a pop out and fly situation. I was trying to get that, and the fact that they didn't implement it coming into stage 2 or season 2 just absolutely disappoints me, because it would take a lot of work. But they're a little shorter on manpower. I don't dislike any of the people there. Well, one person, but two people. But the observers there are working hard, and they're working with what is given them. And I'll tell you right now, not one single person on that crew is going to say no when a developer or a vice president comes in a room and says, "We want you to do this stupid fucking camera view for 10 minutes." They're going to say, "Yes, sir." And they're going to do it, where I wouldn't do it. Like, I would do it once in a while. And then I go, like, "That's stupid. Let's not do this anymore." And then I'd get messages, "Hey, Jason, could you do this some more?" No. So nobody's going to say no, because I thought I had a little bit more security than what I had.
I was just going to ask you, did you do it because you felt like you had security? Because you are not the only person who I've heard of who has said that they were very restrictive on like the content or things that they wanted to put out. I've heard from other people that it's something that is kind of there sometimes, that they are very much, they want to control every single aspect of that, and it sounds like a terrible abusive relationship from the outside, where someone's like, "Guess what? You're going to watch my card. You're going to watch it the way I want you to."
Yeah, well, it's not just that. It's you brought in somebody that you said, "You're the best card detailer around. You invented actually how cars were detailed. You even helped invent the automobile, and you helped invent wax. No, we want you to apply the wax this way." It really was that way, and it's not like, oh, pat myself on the back. I innovated lots of things, and I worked really hard, and I spent years thinking of how to do things a certain way. And it's not, oh, it's got to cut from this, this, and this. No, it's like how to get a team to work as a unit to present a coherent action on the screen. And sometimes we failed, and sometimes we did great. But then having somebody say, "Oh, no, don't go to this Junkrat tire." Well, that Junkrat tire has consistently been getting 4 kills. I'm going to go to that tire. So there was philosophical difference. And the thing is, like, the developers of the game are fucking smart. They're smarter than I will ever be. I do not doubt that for an instant. Except with broadcast. I'm smarter than them when it comes to broadcast. I understand what's making the audience react, and I understand, I'm listening and I'm paying attention, and I'm reading the room every broadcast. I understand what's going on, and it's not blind. And I also, sometimes I would tank stuff, like one of the guys would mess up, and they would ask me about it, and I would say, "Oh, I made a mistake there," because that was my job as a leader to take that. And maybe I could have handled that a little bit differently, but I don't think I would, because that's my job. My job was everything that happened on the screen, and if it made it on the screen, I guess it's my fault. So, whatever.
No, that makes sense. A lot of personal responsibility there too, if you're in that position. Makes me kind of ask a question. You obviously were in this probably not very good relationship with Blizzard. Do you prefer? Is Blizzard been like? Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
So,
correct me.
I thought I was actually in a great relationship with Blizzard.
Yeah.
I actually thought we were in a great relationship because I never had a meeting where they took me aside and said, "Hey, Jason, we don't like you doing this. Hey, Jason, when you say no, this makes us feel bad. Hey, Jason," like nobody once did that.
Yeah.
It was like, "Hey, things are going great. Things are going great. You have to be the one doing this event. You have to be doing this and this and this. Oh, by the way, we don't need you anymore." So I would say they were spineless how they dealt with that. I would have handled a situation where they didn't like what I was doing, and either I wasn't going to change or I was going to change, and I would have known what was coming.
Yeah.
I could handle that. I could handle that just fine. Not everything's great. Everything's great. We're going to give you a full-time job. We're going to fill out the contract and promises that we gave you to, hey, here's your walking papers, because that's really what it was.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like they used you to kind of steal your ideas?
I think that's a tough one. Like I could sit there and you could probably cut like 5 minutes super cut of me going,
I'm okay with it. You have a nice beard. I cannot grow a beard, so
well, can't grow any hair up here, so what can I say? I don't think they used me to steal my ideas. I would say until I came along, especially when I did the Overwatch stuff at E-League, that they were absolutely directionless and they had no idea what they were doing or what they even should be doing. And even after E-League, if you look at the World Cup that year and everything that they would, and then even the stuff that they did at the first contender stuff at Carbon, they would change their mind what they wanted to see over and over, and not just a little bit. I mean, drastically. Oh, we're going to fly through the walls every 5 seconds. Oh, we're going to do over-the-shoulder cameras. Oh, we're going to go on Tracer, and if Tracer gets killed by the other team's Genji, we'll switch to that Genji. Well, guess what? Everybody was trying to peel that Genji. So guess what's going to happen? That Genji is most likely going to die next. But all right, we'll switch to that Genji. Oh, now that Genji's dead. Oh, who killed him? Junkrat. Switch to that Junkrat. You know, it's like that's what they did for a while. And then they switched to other things. My philosophy was trying to get more of an attacker focus. So like kind of some of it was my philosophy and some of it was my mandate. My mandate at first was get people that are potential investors into Overwatch League understanding what's going on the screen. So I would get a lot of flack. Jason, you're not switching characters very much, or you're keeping very static. Well, yeah, but you're not my target audience. My target audiences are people who don't even know video games. Yeah. And then as my audience reach kind of changed, my methods changed. And some is we got better at doing it, and some I was like, all right, I'm sticking to my guns too much on this particular philosophy of staying on the attacking team too much. I can't. They're just getting slaughtered. I need to get my cameras moving faster and better, and which was a big part of it was just the pace of getting everyone to move. It's not one camera, it's all 4 cameras, and they all have to understand where everybody's going. Yeah. So I'm not sure I even answered your original question, or because I went on tangent. So
no, I like tangents. So that's the cool thing about this show is it doesn't have to always be just strict answer. But you did a pretty good job answering the question. You mentioned how you don't feel like they at least intentionally took anything, that they were directionless, and that you conveniently came along and gave them a direction, and then they got rid of you once you gave them the direction.
Yeah, there were people that were very unhappy with me being let go. So they obviously weren't being told. Still not sure if it was 100% the broadcast team or the developers or a little bit of both. I'm sure finances were a big part of it because I was making more money than some of the others. And they said, well, at this point, if we lose Jason and we lose 10%, is that worth it? Okay. Them firing Dan I'm still pissed off at. Like anytime I get pissed off about them, I don't care about me. Like I really don't. I'm doing way better. I work way less days, and I
Yeah.
do way better than I was at Overwatch League. I'm fine. But them getting rid of Dan, who helped invent some of the stuff that we did, and almost all their documentation that they have came from Dan, and a lot of the stuff that we invented that's still yet to come um, was a lot of hard work between Dan and I. It's funny in a way, but yeah, I'm not going to say any more about that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So kind of looking at that, do you prefer the stability of the long-term job, or do you prefer the freelance and the contract work of what you're doing now?
Growing up poor, I want stability.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know where that next paycheck is coming from. Even at Overwatch, I was saving 3 to 4 months, and I actually saved way more than that because we had just done that World Cup, and they end up paying me like 40 hours of double time. So that'll tell you how much travel and work that I did that last paycheck I got from them. And it was like, so saving money is like a big part of what I'll do. I kind of try to invest money, but growing up poor, you don't understand saying that stuff, and you can read as you get older, but it's different when you start off with, oh yeah, my dad left me $200,000 to learn how to invest. Not, yeah, I have $100 in a savings account is what I had. So I think I like stability. I'm secure with the work that I'm doing now. I turn down actually more work than I actually do. So that is nice sometimes because it overlaps with another commitment, sometimes because I just don't want to do it. I was like, oh, I think that's dumb, or I don't want to travel back-to-back events, so I say no. So stability though, like if I had a really good studio offer, like I would, if E-League would have asked me to come back, which I left E-League in the middle of the season too. I burned a bridge there, and they're fine with me, but I burned a bridge to go to Blizzard. And when I did that, it kind of it just kind of ended that. I don't think they'll ever ask me again. I mean, it's possible, but I doubt it. They know what they're doing, because that it was my part of my job was to teach them what to do with esports. So, 1 second. Yeah. Edit that out. Find a way.
Yeah. I can edit it out. That would be pretty funny to keep in.
Yeah. Sucked in some beard. Okay. And go. So, like if I was offered a good studio position or a consistent job where I didn't have to travel as much, I might think about it.
But then you say you got offered 4?
Yeah, but actually more than that probably. But I was offered a lot. But it was, some of it was like, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want management. I don't want to push papers. I don't want to. I was offered a job of like being a head of an entire big company doing lots of their broadcast stuff. And it was going to be really cool. I don't want to do it. I want to do a show. I want to connect people to games. I don't care for directing in games. I like designing how it's supposed to work and flow, but then I want to be hands off. I wanted to actually then now design the rest of the show around it. Some of that is because I don't think my reflex is as fast as it needs to be. But and the other is I care about the entire show and not just the end game. The amount of notes and things that I sent on Overwatch League trying to improve the actual show, and I haven't watched this year, so it could be fucking amazing. I just don't know. I care about the whole show, and it's budget and everything else always kind of dims down what you can do, but I really do. I want the game to be taken care of first, and then afterwards work on the rest.
So if
But
someone
no.
wanted
So
to,
wait. So I didn't even answer your fucking question.
I was going to ask it again, so you're good.
Go ahead, ask it again. So
Okay.
you can cut that whole section out.
No, I'm not gonna. No. It's still you. You stop that. We're doing this live, and this is the way it rolls. It's not live, but it is the way it rolls. If someone wanted to get you in a full-time position, let's say that because you had other offers, and they obviously weren't good enough. If someone wanted to put you in a full-time position, what would they have to give you?
Hopefully not be in LA. That would help a lot. And not New York. It's stupid. The traffic and everything else is stupid. Creative control. Yeah, if it means to be roped to hang myself, then fine. Go ahead. Give me some creative control. Give me a game that I enjoy to play, enjoy to watch, that I can help build storylines and stuff. I mean, a little bit more security, and some of this stuff is just dream stuff, because security is bullshit, because any company can go away.
Oh yeah.
As you know, of the waves and waves and waves of Blizzard people will show you that there is no security, and there's people that are still leaving that company.
Yep.
That aren't laid off, but they've been put into a weird position where they've decided to leave. It's not just them. I mean, it's happened at Turner. It's happened at NLG. Like, if you keep an eye on all the different companies, and even people that work at Twitch, ESL, they're leaving or getting let go as scopes of projects change. So, is there a way to insulate myself from that? No, unless like some billionaire is like, man, Jason, I like you. Why don't you come and live in this city, and I'll pay you to do whatever you want?
That would be nice. I would like that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Like, all right, I'll work on this project for you.
So it has to be enough money that you feel secure, not necessarily that is a true thing that is going on.
Yeah, I mean, really, my promise that one of the promises that I was given at Blizzard was, and they touted, "Oh, we never have layoffs." Like, well, you guys did have this big chunk, but I really wanted a place to retire. I wanted to build their entire broadcasting system and once again tie it to the games, instead of a bunch of people who do broadcasts that just happen to be filming stuff around games, which is what it feels like a lot of times. I wanted to tie it closer to the communities, tie it. So the difference between, and I had this talk with Turner when I was working with them, the difference between esports and sports is above the fan. The fan at home is looking up to the sports gods, and they're looking up to it. Esports is of the community. The fan at home and the other people playing online in their little leagues, we're the same.
Yeah.
And me as a broadcaster, I'm hanging out with my friends, and if my friends, it's a Counter-Strike broadcast with 1 million people, it's still my 1 million friends. And some are complete assholes, and some are idiots, and some are just the best people you'll ever meet. And that's fine. So to me, of building the stuff of the community, where it's not even talking down, because I think it's okay as a gamer to talk down to each other, because that's how we talk sometimes, but to give them content that they relate to and understand and root for and want to watch. You know, it's like nobody wants to watch TV, so all the TV stations are, oh, what are they watching? Oh, gaming. Oh, we'll just put gaming on TV. No, it doesn't fucking work like that. You've already lost us.
Yeah.
So the answer is yes, if the opportunity sounded right, and it's not even so much about money. I care about having enough money to live on, and that's it. I don't care about gaining wealth. Mm-hmm. I want to have good shows, and if I have where I don't have to worry about paycheck to paycheck, and I can put on a good show, that makes me pretty happy. But I'm also if the next 2 years all I'm doing is traveling and doing these shows, I'm that as well. It's not like I hate it. Like I say I hate traveling.
You just hate the
but
traveling. You love everything
yeah,
else so much more, though.
yeah,
Like the
and
people and
5
going
minutes
places.
after 5 minutes after I'm home, I just want to do another show. So
yeah, that makes that's a really good point there. So when you kind of like look at these different aspects of where you want to go and where you want to go to, a lot of it has to do with you wanting a place to retire. But you mentioned that money isn't a really big issue for you, and you're someone who I've seen who could have probably made it really, really big in esports as far as like money wise. With what you've created broadcast wise, I have a hard time believing that you couldn't have monetized. But you do stuff like you give away, like Overwatch is a good example. You gave away a lot of the stuff that you were doing on broadcasting and how to broadcast this to just everyone. You just gave it away. You're like, here, this is how you make a better product. I want you to have this. This is my responsibility to give this to you so you can make a better broadcast for this game that we're all working on.
I mean, I've done that for multiple games. I've sent stuff to developers personally of like, I don't care if I ever work on this, but if you do this, this, and this, it'll improve your broadcast. I believe strongly in esports and the entertainment and showing things correctly. I believe in it a lot. If I would have stayed in Phoenix like 2 or 3 more months, and I had a World of Warcraft addiction, so that's a whole nother story we probably hit. So if I would have stayed in Phoenix like 2 or 3 more months, I would have been with the whole EG stuff that Sir Scoots did, and I probably would have had a nice paycheck when they got bought by Twitch. There's a couple little things that I've missed, but I mean, I grew up without much, so I don't need I want a computer that runs, and runs good. I want a good computer. I want a guitar. I want internet. I want a roof over my head, a bed that doesn't suck. That's about it. You know, I mean, a car's got to work, but I just don't. And some of that puts up red flags. Hey, take advantage of me. But I'm a blue collar working guy. I want to just work. I don't want to be I'm the CEO of this corporation, blah blah blah. Like I hate all that slick and, lying and like, look at me. Like I hate that bullshit. I want a good show and I want to make a good living at it. And if I get rich along the way, that's great. Hey, that's great. But it's not like if you offer me, hey, Jason, this is a great job. We'll pay you $200 a day to do this show. I ain't fucking doing it. I'll say no. So like my passion only goes so far. But I'm not gonna say, oh, here's $500,000 a year we'll pay you to be a vice president of X. Well, I don't like that job. That job sounds boring. I ain't gonna do it. You can't buy me that way because I worked on I hated working on copiers at the end, and I left it and came back because after I went full time and then I came back and then I quit it again. And to make hardly any money for a while. It's, life is short. You should enjoy yourself. If you wake up in the morning and you're like, I don't want to do what I'm doing, then every spare moment needs to be, how can I get out of this?
Yeah.
So, when I got let go from Blizzard, my full-time job was let me roll back. When I got let go from Got Frag and they closed down our Phoenix office, my full-time job was playing World of Warcraft. I had a bunch of money from our buyout sitting in the bank, and I don't need much, and I was perfectly fine and happy, and I just played World of Warcraft, and hey, we were the top guild on our server. And that's all I did. When I got let go from Blizzard, my full-time job was finding jobs and then re-equating myself. I mean, that's all I could do when I worked Overwatch League was work Overwatch League. I hardly paid attention. So I went back and started watching all the big events that I missed. Started paying attention to any of the new talent that came up, any of the new games, any of the new kind of methods that other people have done in Counter-Strike. There's some guys that are doing some really great stuff. So I care about all that stuff. So that's that's what I think anyone else needs to do. If you don't like where you are, your full-time job shouldn't be escape. It should be, what can I do to improve myself? And even now, I work really hard on Blast Pro, and I work really hard on a couple other events that I'm doing that most people will never know that I had anything to do with, and I'm great. I'd rather nobody know who I am. So I'm working on that stuff really hard, and then I work on, maybe I'll play a video game, or maybe I'll watch a tournament that I don't even like. Like, I don't like MOBAs, but I like the production. Like, I'll watch a League and I'll watch Dota. I'll shut it off when the game's on after a while. Like, I'll watch half of the game and understand how they're using some stats and stuff, but then I turn it off. But it is about putting time away for self-improvement and getting yourself out of the problems that you find yourself. And, be it a dead-end job or bad relationship or something like that, that's how I look at things.
I like that. That's kind of what, like, the whole premise of the show actually was kind of like, oh, I need to do something. This is what I want to do. So I'm going to start figuring out a way to kind of like start to get into this. And this was like my way of thinking of like, what do I offer that I could do that I think would be good? And first of all, kudos to you. Thank you for, if anyone wonders why anything gets better on the show as far as like what it looks like, that is probably due to this man here who's like, hey, Blake, guess what? You need to fix your lighting because you look like a fucking ghost. And I'm like, yep, you're right. Let's try to work on that. So now I am like slightly.
I give lots of people unasked for advice.
I love it.
And more people than you'll ever know. And some people when they're first starting out, and some people, it's because I care about it, and I care about them, and I care about people getting the correct feedback. Because I'm not scared of telling you that fucking sucked, because you're not going to get better unless somebody tells you that it sucked. Because I've never been happy like walking out of a show. I've always been pissed off. I've always not liked something about the show, and that's the thing that I remember. Not, oh, we did this great moment. No, we did a bad toss to this video piece. That's what I think. So when I don't know exactly how that works. I just try to, when people ask me for advice, I give it. And when I see somebody doing something that I think is really wrong, I give advice. And I usually try to say, hey, I know you didn't ask, but, and I'll give it. Because I think when you're working on self-improvement as a broadcaster or talent, you have lots of people telling you things. And either you have way too many people telling you you're great, because you're famous, now they want to be your friend. Like, I don't try to be friends with, I'm friends with talent, but I don't try to become friends with talent. I don't need their approval, and they don't need mine. And once I get that relationship settled down, unless I'm their boss, when I'm their boss, then they need my approval. But usually it's like, I think like the feedback female talent gets is the worst, and that stuff drives me nuts. And it's not like, I'm not a let's worry about diversity type of guy. I'm a let's find somebody that's good for this position. And if once I think that they're good, I'm fine with whoever they are. I think trying to think of the best way to the first thing a woman gets mentioned about is like what she looks like, and guys get it too. Like, you ask Anders, how much people have asked him, and like, he's lost a lot of weight lately. He's getting into shape. He's mostly doing it for his kids. and his kid's future. He's not, as far as I know.
No,
He's
on
not
my
like,
show, that's actually something he talked about, was the fact that he was worried about not being there for his kids all the time. And so that was one of the reasons why he actually started working out, was because of that.
But I mean, you think that he got lots of abuse when they were first coming up of, oh, he's the fat one, oh, he's the big guy. And women get that all the time. And it's like everything from what they're wearing to, oh, he seemed a little too aggressive with that guy, and I have a fragile ego, so I'm scared of how loud that woman was. Like, it's so, like, it's very weird. I watch the comments and on chats and stuff, and it's absolutely funny to me. And so I try to reassure the different women I work with in the industry of, when they're doing something good, to continue to keep doing it and to ignore this advice that they're getting. I like, every talent should be different, and everyone should have their own signature style.
Yeah.
And once they have it, they can improve on little things, but you shouldn't have to change your personality. Oh, I want you to be more like God. Because I think there was one time that I was somebody asked me what I thought, and I was like, I would like you to be a little bit stronger on the desk. And I still think about that comment that I told a woman to be stronger, and which almost sounds like saying, you're not like a guy enough.
Yeah.
And that's not what I meant. I just wanted things accented a certain way because it helps production. But that's not what they heard. And I still think about that advice, and like, I never went back to that person, years later and said, hey, I shouldn't have said that. No, they got better on their own. So I try to be careful with that type of stuff nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
Of would I ever tell a guy this advice, or would I? So it's stuff that I've definitely more aware of lately. And I mean, we had female talent on 2006 on broadcast, so it's not like I'm worried about trailblazers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I want good talent. I want somebody that's interesting, and I want somebody that brings something to a broadcast. And sometimes I don't get to pick who I want.
Yeah.
But there's rarely have I been disappointed with any talent that I've worked with.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So one of the things I wanted to kind of jump back on, and we mentioned this kind of earlier, like changing topics just a little bit here, as you were talking about World of Warcraft and your addiction to it. And you mentioned that when you said that, it sounds like it was right around the same time that MLG Battle got frag, and you were in, right?
Yeah, it was at the end of it. So we did. I think it was like right at the end of 2008. It was right when Wrath of the Lich King came out. It's when MLG closed us down and wanted us to move to New York. And I was raiding like 2 or 3 nights a week, and then we had a group that did Tin Mans, and then I did PvP. And, to me, that stuff, it lies to you about getting accomplishments, and it gives you that reward mechanism in your brain of, you probably understand it better than I do.
It's the same thing as gambling.
Yeah.
Okay, this sounds terrible. I'm not saying that video games are terrible like gambling, but they do work on the same psychological principles that gambling does in reward systems. Okay, to pull people in. Okay, abusing anything to an extreme is really bad. Okay,
all things in moderation. All things in moderation.
So,
and, I mean, to me, it was really, I would wake up in the morning playing WoW, and then I'd go and eat something, and then I would do my pre-raid stuff, and then we'd do our raid, and then a group of us would all play a 10-man raid afterwards, and then on the weekends, me and my girlfriend would play PvP, and then that's all we did was like that over and over. And then you get a new patch, and why did you do all this? What was all this for? And I think after a while, that experience, and I'll still play WoW from time to time. I play lots of games, but that mechanism either burnt out or I shut it off. I don't know. I'd like to pretend that I have this strong will and I've shut off the dopamine receptors for video games. That's not true. It's burnt out. I'm guessing because it doesn't work. Like gambling's never worked. Like when I put $20 down, it doesn't matter what happened. I think I'm losing $20. Not that I might gain 40. And I think that mindset in gambling is there. And in video games, or it's like, oh, I get this reward if I do this. We'll be the first people to do this accomplishment. We had like the first 3 Drakes in Lich King on our server, and that was a big deal. But who cares? Like you can go in there and do it with one person now. Like who gives a shit? So like the reward mechanics in WoW just does nothing for me anymore. It absolutely, and any loot shooters do nothing. Like I don't get that. Ooh, what's in this box? Ooh, or check out this skin. It does nothing for me. All I care about is the gameplay. Is the gameplay fun? Okay, I don't give a shit what you give me out of this. So
one of the things I was going to ask you is you had mentioned in an interview that when you were in Arizona, especially after MLG had bought Godfrag, it was a point where you kind of went through what you called a depression. Was that around the same time that you were?
Yeah, it was around the same time.
Okay,
I kind of like fell into that's like I just buried myself into WoW, but like nothing else really made me happy, and really WoW didn't make me happy. And even when I came back here, it was I slept, played WoW, looked for jobs, and yeah, to me it was like looking back on it, especially when I was in Arizona. It's like, so Scott and I, or Sir Scoots, as most people know him, we've been friends since 2002. And when I would work on copiers, like some of my calls were 50 to 100 miles away, and Scott a lot of times worked remotely for events, or he'd work 1 weekend and then he'd be off for an entire month, or he'd work 3 months and then he'd be completely free for a couple of months. So we had I would call him up on the phone and we would talk for hours, and like a lot of the stuff that we developed and came up with was on those drives. So I'd go for drives and, hey Scott, what if we did this? Or hey, did you hear about what this person's doing in the league? And like we would bullshit for hours at a time. And so I lived 3 blocks from Scott's house. Like I could walk to Scott's house. It was so close. And after they closed down Godfrag, I bet you I went to his house in a 3 or 4 month period. I bet you I went to his house 3 times. Because I was trying not to face the fact that, hey, I had my dream job and it went away. I had everything I wanted, and like I had a fancier title than I've ever had, like director of broadcasting or something like that, Job titles are bullshit anyway, but they matter, but they're bullshit. So yeah, I mean, that's all I did was just play WoW and sleep and eat. And I didn't go and visit my friend. Like if I would have had, one WoW to hide into, and I guess depression or whatever. I mean, it's not like I was diagnosed. But whatever it was I had, like if I would have been over at Scott's house, we'd have been scheming and coming up with new things we could do, and like who knows where we would have gone if we would have just focused our efforts onto, because this was before Twitch came out. I mean, he was involved in a lot of the early Twitch stuff. Would we have done more stuff together? Yes. And we still, like me and Scott, we'll play co-op games. Like we'll play the stupid puzzle games where one person can see one thing and somebody else. We'll play those. Like we just still play lots of co-op games. He just doesn't stream anymore, but we do play often, and we talk, and I would say it took me, I think what snapped me out of that was I was trying to find work, and I didn't want to work on copier. And somebody got me a job at Brown Shoe, which was a shoe company in St. Louis, which I don't know. I guess they're big. I don't know. And it was working on their website stuff. So people would take the photographers would take pictures of shoes, and then somebody would cut out the shoes and put them into better backgrounds and fix the shoes. And I got a job doing that, and I lasted one day. And I had never been so mind-numbingly bored than that particular job. And I was like, I'm never doing this shit again. I'm not doing it. I can't work like this. And the money was actually decent. But I was like, I can't do this. So I called up the copier place, and they hired me back as if I had never left. They gave me all my raises. They gave me all my vacation time. They paid me a bonus for signing. Like, that was great. But I was like, I ain't doing that anymore. And I started, I really stopped playing WoW. Eventually, WoW is like a thing of community and friends. So like we got to the point where I'd play one day a week, but it still didn't do anything for me other than just playing. So that's, I guess that's, to me, hitting rock bottom would be photoshopping shoes for about a day. And that was like, I ain't doing that shit anymore.
Yeah, I don't blame you, especially after, like, from what you went through to going into like making shoes. That would be something that is just very, very difficult and like almost completely opposite of like everything that you could ever do from that moment. For I, like, even now, like having like worked in esports like very, very briefly for a year, and finally like making it, like working my way up slowly. I'm like, listen, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna figure some way to do it. I'm not going to those jobs, because when I was doing school, because I was working on my master's, I would talk with these people and I'm like, oh my God, I can't work with you. I can't even be around you. You're just like driving me insane. So like totally feel that there's something kind of greater looking forward here. So looking at production, what is the biggest thing you think about productions that needs to start improving for esports? What is the one thing that you want to see esports start to incorporate more of?
Well, some do it better than others. So I think for the most part, like Counter-Strike, for instance, is at a really good spot. If you take a look at the E-League majors, especially, and then you take a look at the last one that ESL did, there's a really great balance of great game moments, great anticipation, great storylines, great death segments, great player reactions, and just ties that all in together. I think it's an expensive, time-consuming, and it takes somebody who really understands how it all works together to get that to work. And there's some stuff that I always wanted to do that I end up being able to do at E-League, and there was some stuff that they taught me to do. Like you take something like, let's bag on Alf.
Okay.
Let's bag on our Overwatch League, because they got a shit ton of money and they've got an audience that they don't understand. That's the way I look at it. And this isn't an esports problem. This is an OWL problem. They don't understand the way fans relate to players, and they don't understand how the fans are engaged with the product that they have. Unless they have done something remarkably different this season. Have you watched?
A little bit here and there, and it doesn't seem that it is. To me, it doesn't seem. It doesn't. I don't like some of the stuff that I have watched, especially like when the season first started. I've watched it, and there are things that I very much do not like, and they might be very simple, like the standing desk. I don't like the way that is like filmed, but I'm also in no way a director or producer. I don't like the fact that it doesn't seem that they go into very much detail about games anymore. It seems very surface level.
Yeah. So once again, there's two things that's going on there. We have a company that has cut their budget a lot.
Yeah.
And then we also have a certain target that we don't understand what they're trying to hit. And they're trying to hit some sort of audience member that we don't know who they are.
I'm not that audience
But
member. I'll tell you that much.
yeah, but you know, when you know, a player does a really big moment, are they cutting out to the camera to that player when he does a big moment, or are they doing a picture-in-picture? Because me and a guy named Jose were working on all the picture-in-picture and player camera stuff, and he left and I left. Well, pretty much we're both gone. So I don't think anybody took up the mantle of we need to show players more. Are they coming? Are they going out to break with a montage of great moments that players are doing? No. I can tell. I'm not even watching it, but I know
I'm almost positive they don't.
They didn't spend the money to get the EVS crew to do that. You lose some big moments because players are being told to stay in their seats between maps. So players aren't even able to get up and show any emotion. And really, how can you show any fucking emotion in a 4-map series when the last map doesn't even fucking matter?
Yeah.
So you're losing storyline and you're losing connection with the audience if you're not showing them when somebody like Surefour has this huge following and has like, oh, this player's jersey sells more than anyone, huge fan base, and he's here. I mean, we'll tell you he's here, but we'll show him on camera for 15 seconds and you never see him the rest of the time. The fact that things like that happen and you're losing that connection with the player and it's easy to build storylines of, who's I think Sleepy or somebody just got traded.
Yeah, to Washington Justice. Yeah, shock Sleepy. He just got traded to Washington Justice because he wasn't getting played because Violet was playing the entire time over him for Shock.
Okay. So you already know more than I do. I just like, oh, that's weird. But like, so somebody like that, when he goes and plays and versus his ex team, that's your storyline, and you build that storyline on the desk, and you build it with some stats, and then you're observing. Builds it in, and then you cut out to some reaction shots. And yeah, some other stuff is happening in the game, and you're paying attention to the big picture, but your little side story is paying attention to what's going on with Sleepy versus old team. Mm-hmm. And we were able to do that really well in the first season with a couple player trades, but you still didn't have everything. You didn't have the player reactions. You didn't have a lot of the shots and just like the B-roll and some interviews. Like there's lots of things that you can tie in that they as a company miss out. And I think from a production standpoint, production is hard. Period. That anybody who walks into an event and like, oh, this is easy, we'll just do this, and this, and you watch them fail, you go, of course you fail because you thought it was easy. Every fucking thing is hard. A lot of things are figured out, and you should be able to figure out how to fix it. But it's hard, and it takes effort and planning. And when you walk into an event, if you don't get the game right correctly, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But once you get the game settled, all right, now what can we do to tie the emotion in? And and once again, depends on your audience. If you're only going for the core audience, emotion doesn't matter as much. You can get by with just game stuff. But as soon as you want to put it on TV, like if you're Rocket League, you're on. I have not watched any of the Rocket League on TVS. However, I know exactly what they're doing. They're doing some fast-paced, quick, entertaining death segments. They have some player profiles. When a player has a big moment, they're doing some picture-in-picture. They're cutting out to them. That is textbook how you do mass appeal esports, and figuring out how to fit that into every game is its own puzzle.
I was going to say, like Counter-Strike, the way that they handle media, especially like media with players, is probably like when I watch it, I'm like, oh, this is like they're including some of the stuff I really wish I saw more in esports, like with the players and it's still, for me personally, I want more. Like I want to know who these people are to like the core of their being, but I feel like I am an outlier in that, and most people probably don't care as much as I do. But like that was part of the show. Was like, how do I get to really know people? And it's have them being on the show where I can ask them questions to get people to know them, and I want to see more of that in esports. But one of the things I noticed with Counter-Strike is they the way that they schedule media requirements, and it might be partially due to the way the game just is, like the metas and stuff related to it in practice, and also that it's always traveling. But I noticed that because I worked with Gladiators last year, media was always paid, and I feel like you probably never got as much as you wanted from teams. Like if you could have had more media days where you could have came in and recorded different things with them, I feel like you guys would have. Is that a problem?
Some of it comes down to there's lots of things that you can do with players, but you got to lower your standards.
Mm-hmm.
So you have 24 hours to turn a piece around because it's going to be on air the next day. Yeah. So what are you going to do? Well, the lighting's not perfect. Who cares? You got to let that go. So I don't think you should ever lower your audio standards, but if you can just take some player shots and then put some B-roll over the top of it, you can get away with a lot. But it takes planning of coming in. Oh, we're going to go talk to Neo. He's playing on a smaller team. He used to be in the top team in the world and one of the best players of all time, and now he's kind of in his lower years. What's this like? If you want to go through that emotional journey with him, you can just slap up some nice B-roll of him from the old days coming all the way up, and then some of like his frustrating moments. You got montages of him being frustrated, and you interslice that with an interview with him. Like just something like that is so simple and so easy to do. Oh, you don't have the perfect background behind Neo. Like to me, you build. Some of that stuff is you got to plan on what you want. So I'm going all over the place. Okay. So when we would film at the CPLs in the old days, we filmed to tape. And so every 5 minutes of footage would take 5 minutes to transfer. And then it would have to go to an encoding process. And then you could start editing it. And then once you were done editing it, it would take another 30 minutes to an hour to render your 5-minute video. Shit took lots of time. We walked into those events with everything planned out. Not exactly who we're going to talk to, but we had our basic storyline. You have to walk into an event from a player's standpoint of, this is who we want to talk to, this is the theme that we're going with, this is what we're going to use to support the interview, and we can get this whole thing done in 5 or 10 minutes. Because it's very pointed. We know what the video is going to look like. A lot of times these people come into, what do you mean these people? Like video teams come in and they'll ask some generic questions and they'll just start filming. And they'll film a guy for an hour or 30 minutes and they expect to get something out of it. Like our interview here, this is shit. This is shit. You could never, you can get a gem out of this interview. Mm-hmm. But it's going to take a lot of work. Like you're going to do a highlight clip of something, or you're going to do your teaser, and you'll have probably me saying, "Well, fuck that guy, fuck him up his stupid ass." That's your highlight clip, all right? And that's your teaser. It's like everybody's like, "Oh my god, what's Jason talking about?" Jason's just talking about Jason saying that word. But you're digging for gold through an hour-long clip, and you're running out of time because the clock's Because it's never, oh, the show airs at 1:00 and I got to have this thing done at 1:00. No, it's got to be delivered. It's got to be QA'd. It's got to go through, like maybe a vice president has to look at it. So you have really now this idea in your head of I have 24 hours is now shrunk down to 16 hours to make this video. And you're hunting for something good. Where if you know the subjects well enough and you know what you want out of a video, you can get it really fast.
Yeah.
Do you think of filmmakers that walk in and film where they're filming to edit? Like they know what this sequence is supposed to look like. Either they've storyboarded it or they've done it in their head, and they're editing with the camera because they know they have these shots. It's the same way I think of filming footage with players you can look for something and hunt for gold, or you could do a really pointed video and get it done fast. And that way you can get more videos, because if you can do 6 videos instead of 4, Now you've just related to more players, and you've gotten more coverage. And now because now you have a 2-minute video, the technical director can get up and go to the bathroom. And I'm sorry that I build content and videos and breaks around letting people go to the bathroom, but I do.
I'm sure everyone is grateful that you do that.
Yeah.
I'm sure that they're very happy about that, because I don't blame them there. So we've gotten through some good stuff. I'm feeling good. I don't know if you're feeling good about this, but I do have one last question for you.
Okay.
It's either the easiest or hardest question depending on who you are. So you've been on the show. It's a different show than I think hopefully most shows that you've been on. Hopefully. That being said,
usually it's me rambling, but go on.
Yeah. That being said, if you could see anyone involved in esports on the show, who would it be? They can be involved in any capacity. The only really requirement is that they need to speak English, because I'm uncultured and don't speak other languages. So they need to be able to speak English. Otherwise, it's just going to be awkward. But it can be involved in any esport in doing anything. Who would you have?
I think right now it would be interesting to see a team owner, because they're especially if you look in the Call of Duty where they're facing this kind of franchise system.
Yeah.
If you took one of those smaller teams that are on the cusp of, do we look for funding, or do we fold, or do we change our focus? To me, that's interesting. I mean, if you want to take somebody, if you took Jason Lake, because Jason Lake has gone through the full gambit of financing out of his own pocket. When I first heard him he debuted on a radio show that I was on, and we're typing in chat. We thought he was crazy. I mean, he had been drinking that day, I will say, but we thought he was a bit nuts. But how much he stuck to his guns and how much he put into a team, I think Jason Lake would be my first go-to.
I feel like someone else, I think it was Anders who also mentioned Jason Lake as well.
Yeah.
I feel like
I think team owners are going through some interesting things right now, and he has gone through the entire thing. Like, he's almost had a fold multiple times, and he's got funding, and I wouldn't say he feels like he's made it, like he's at the top, but now he's actually at a point where where he's not worried about, we're going to make our next budget, or I mean, he probably is, but not in the same way that he was, 10 years ago. So that would be my pick.
Okay. That is actually all the questions that I had for you coming in here. Did you have any shout outs or anything? I don't really do them, but if you want them, I'll let you have them.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the people that I talk to all the time,
I will say you were one of the most recommended guests for this show. Just
really?
So you're aware. I kid you not. I'm willing to bet another half finger on it that you are the most recommended guest on my show so far.
I would say, and you've asked me multiple times, and I'm like, I can't, I'm busy. So I would say maybe they're like, oh, you kind of look at things from a mental health standpoint. You should talk to Jason because he's fucking nuts.
You're not nuts. You're not nuts. You're not nuts.
Yeah,
I've worked with crazy people before, so I can tell you that you're not. I'm not a therapist, so I can't diagnose you. But yeah. I'm telling you, you're not crazy. Like, there are much crazier people out there. You're a little blunt. Some people don't like that because they're a little.
I try to be blunt, but I try to be reasonable. And I often tell people that I have a very strong opinion about X, but I also know that I can be wrong. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say no to this, or I'm going to put my foot down and explain why I don't like this. Mm-hmm. But if you can convince me that I'm wrong, I'll be like, oh, I'm a fucking idiot. Let's do that this way. I'm fine with that. But you just got to stand up to me being no, or it's, I want it done this way. You either have to stand up to it or wilt away, because good ideas get challenged, and I'm challenging your idea immediately. And if you can't push it through my initial block, then your idea is not good enough, or you can't sell your idea.
Yeah.
And it's not like I always say no, but there's lots of times people's like, hey, we should do things this way. No, I've learned from this, and this that this has to be done this particular order or this way. And you have to convince me.
Oh,
so
that's a good spot to end it, I think. So I'm gonna give us the rollout here. This has been, first of all, thank you so much. I need to
Thank
do
you.
that. Thank you so much for being on the show, taking the time out of your day. It is longer. I appreciate it so much. It means a lot to have you finally on the show. So with that being said, everyone out there, this has been Deep Dives in the Minds of Esports. My name is Blake Panashevitz, and until next time, I hope everyone has a wonderful day.